Welcome to this particularly vegetative edition of Intergalactic Insider. Today, we're taking a deep dive, and I mean really deep, like down to the roots deep, into the increasingly tangled world of sentient plants. Now, we've nibbled around the edges of this topic before. We've pondered the philosophical implications, the potential for a green mind controlling the weather, still blaming you for that rainy picnic, Professor Cosmos, and the general awkwardness of realizing your houseplants might be judging your interior design choices. But today, we're getting to the meat of the matter, or, the non-meat of the matter. We're talking about food. To help us navigate this ethical and culinary minefield, and hopefully prevent me from accidentally offending any more photosynthesizing life forms, we have Dr. Flora Greenleaf, a renowned xenobotanist and the galaxy's leading authority on interspecies culinary ethics. Dr. Greenleaf, welcome, and was that a squeak? Are the studio plants already staging a protest?
Thank you, Felix. And yes, that was young Basil. He's feeling a bit underappreciated today. Apparently, the studio's artificial sunlight isn't quite up to his standards. He prefers the specific wavelength emitted by the Glargan 7 star system. He's quite the connoisseur.
A connoisseur of sunlight, of course. So, Dr. Greenleaf, let's get right to it. We as a galactic community have largely accepted that plants are sentient, in their own uniquely planty way. But this creates a rather large, leafy problem for those of us who, need to eat. Are we all destined for a future of bland, ethically sourced nutrient paste? Because, frankly, the nebula noodle surprise I had last week tasted suspiciously like recycled space boots.
It's a valid concern and one that's generating a lot of buzz in the culinary world. But thankfully, the future of food is far more exciting and far less boot flavored than you might fear. We're not just giving up and switching to nutrient paste. We're seeing a revolution in food technology and ethics, a blossoming, if you'll pardon the pun, of new approaches to sustainable and compassionate cuisine.
Blossoming. I see what you did there. So let's talk about this ethical harvesting. It sounds like something out of a futuristic horror movie. Are we talking about whispering sweet nothings to the carrots before we yank them out of the ground? Do we need to get a signed consent form from the lettuce before we make a salad?
Hey. While some experimental chefs are exploring the possibilities of interspecies communication, with varying degrees of success, I might add, ethical harvesting is primarily about minimizing harm and stress to the plant during the harvesting process. Think of it like this. On Earth Classic, you had different methods of raising and slaughtering animals. Some were considered more humane than others. The same principle applies to plants, but with a botanical twist. We're developing techniques like precision harvesting, where only specific parts of the plant are removed, allowing it to regenerate. We're using bioacoustic sensors to monitor the plant's stress levels and adjust our methods accordingly. And yes, we're even exploring the use of bioanesthetics, naturally derived compounds that temporarily reduce the plant's sensory perception.
Bioanesthetics. So we're basically putting the vegetables to sleep before we, that's surprisingly civilized in a deeply unsettling way. Are there any plant rights groups lobbying for, mandatory spa treatments before harvesting? Maybe a relaxing aromatherapy session and a gentle massage with organic fertilizer?
Massage! Good.
Did anyone else hear that?
That, Felix, might have been a passing thought from a particularly receptive, let's say spiritually advanced, head of romaine lettuce in the studio's hydroponic garden. They're quite fond of aromatherapy, actually. Lavender is particularly popular.
This is all getting a bit surreal, but it does raise a fundamental question, doesn't it? If plants are sentient, if they can experience stress, if they can apparently appreciate a good aromatherapy session, does that make every meal a moral compromise? Are we all just ethically doomed?
It's a challenge, Felix, and there are no easy answers. But I believe it's a challenge we must face. We're being forced to confront our assumptions about our place in the universe, our relationship with other life forms, and the very definition of food. It's an opportunity to evolve, to become more compassionate, more mindful, and more interconnected with the living world around us. It is a chance to connect on a deeper emotional level.
Interconnected. Right. Speaking of interconnected, let's get back to that sentience spectrum you've mentioned before. Are all plants created equal, ethically speaking? Is a highly intelligent, possibly telepathic Venusian flytrap more deserving of my moral consideration than, say, space potato? Because I've got a bag of those in my pantry, and I'm starting to feel a little guilty.
Hey, the sentient spectrum is a crucial concept. Just as in the animal kingdom, there's a vast range of cognitive abilities within the plant kingdom. We're still developing the precise metrics, but it's clear that some species are far more complex and aware than others. The Venusian flytrap, with its sophisticated trapping mechanisms and apparent ability to learn and adapt, is definitely on the higher end. A space potato? Well, let's just say it's probably not writing poetry in its spare time. Though I wouldn't rule it out entirely. The universe is full of surprises.
What is it now, Basil? Is the studio temperature not to your liking? Are we fluctuating outside your optimal 22.3 to 22.5 degrees Celsius range?
He says the air circulation is inadequate. He requires a gentle southwesterly breeze, mimicking the prevailing winds of his native Glargon 7 microclimate, and he'd appreciate it if you could refrain from using the term space potato in his presence. It's speciesist.
Speciesist. Of course. My apologies, Basil. We'll endeavor to create a more Glargonian atmosphere for you. But what about those talking trees you've mentioned in passing? The ones that supposedly hold philosophical debates about the meaning of life? Surely they're off limits, culinarily speaking.
Ah, the whispering trees of Cygnus B. They are a special case. Communicating with them is, well, it's like having a conversation with the universe itself. They possess a wisdom that transcends our understanding, a perspective that stretches back eons. And frankly, they're rather opinionated.
Opinionated? About what?
About everything, Felix. About the proper way to brew cosmic tea. About the existential angst of asteroids. About the, questionable fashion choices of certain sentient fungi. They have very strong feelings about fungi.
Actually, in timeline Omega 42, the talking trees formed a culinary alliance with the sentient mushrooms. It was a gastronomic revolution. Until the Great Fruit Rebellion of, oh bother, I seem to be unstuck in time again. Never mind, carry on. Don't let me interrupt the knobbling of the schmeckleberries.
Professor Cosmos, always a unique perspective. Listeners, it is time to activate your neural networks. The question that is plaguing this corner of the galaxy is, if plants were proven sentient, would you become a synth-etarian, eating only synthetic food? Yes. No. Maybe if the plants tasted better sentient. Cast your votes now. Dr. Greenleaf, this is all incredibly fascinating and slightly overwhelming. But what about the practical side of things? What can the average intergalactic citizen, the person who just wants a decent meal without triggering an ethical crisis, do?
It's a valid question, Felix. And there are concrete steps we can all take. First, be informed. Learn about where your food comes from, how it was produced, and the ethical implications of your choices. Look for certifications and labels that indicate plant-conscious or ethically harvested practices. Support businesses and organizations that are committed to sustainable and compassionate food systems. Second, be mindful. Appreciate the food you're consuming, the resources that went into producing it, and the lives that are involved, even if those lives are rooted in the soil. And third, be open to change. The future of food is evolving rapidly. Be willing to try new things, to experiment with alternative protein sources, and to embrace a more plant-respectful way of eating.
And as a little experiment, I want everyone listening to try something. The next time you're preparing a meal that includes plants, whether it's a salad, a stir-fry, or even just a side of space fries, take a moment to connect with your ingredients. Look at them, smell them, maybe even talk to them. See if you can sense anything, a feeling, a vibration, a whisper of sentience. And then, let us know what happens. Use hashtag #SentientSalad and share your experiences. We might even feature some of your stories on the show. Speaking of connecting, I think I'm starting to hear something again. Is Basil beatboxing? And is the fern providing backup vocals?
It seems your empathic abilities are blossoming, Felix. You're tuning into the rhythmic pulse of the plant kingdom. They're quite the musical bunch, actually.
Basil, did you just stage a fertilizer protest? What's the problem now?
He says the studio's generic, mass-produced fertilizer is an insult to his refined palate. He demands organic, hand-composted, moon rock-enriched fertilizer, preferably from the volcanic slopes of, oh dear, Xylos Prime.
Xylos Prime. That's on the other side of the galaxy, and their volcanic slopes are currently experiencing unprecedented seismic activity and a 95% chance of catastrophic eruption. I am not sending a delivery drone to Xylos Prime for fertilizer. Well, Dr. Greenleaf, this has been an experience. I've learned more about plant sentience and my own latent empathic abilities than I ever thought possible, and I am now apparently hosting a botanical jam session and dealing with a fertilizer crisis in my studio. The big takeaway? The universe is full of surprises. Our ethical responsibilities are constantly evolving, and apparently, even vegetables have rhythm and extremely specific fertilizer preferences. Thanks for joining us, and for the, unexpected concert and demands.
My pleasure, Felix. And remember, even a simple salad can be a source of wonder, of ethical reflection, and of surprisingly catchy tunes.
And to our listeners, what do you think? Are you ready to embrace a plant-conscious future? Or are you going to start eyeing your houseplants with suspicion? Let us know using hashtag #SentientSalad, and don't forget to answer our poll question. Cast your vote. Are you Team Synth-Etarian? And up next, prepare your auditory sensors for a journey into the mathematical heart of music and the surprisingly emotional power of pie. It's going to be a tearjerker, folks. Literally. You won't want to miss it.